All right, so today we're diving deep into the world of recreation model making. We've got a ton of resources from RoleCatcher, um, career guides, interview guides, and even some insight into how their AI can actually help you nail that dream job.
So it's really fascinating because this field is really the perfect blend of technical skills and that kind of artistic, flair that you need. It's not just building, you're actually creating something.
Yeah, I love that. You're creating these tiny worlds and they each have their own little stories. So I think let's jump right into the interview prep because that's where I think RoleCatcher really shines.
Mm.
They've given us a bunch of these common interview questions, and we're going to unpack them. We'll give you some strategic approaches, and we'll even give you some potential follow-up questions that they might hit you with.
Sounds good to me. So, one of the questions I've seen pop up quite a bit in the beginning is, what experience do you have in creating models for recreational purposes?
Hmm.
And it seems pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but they're really trying to gauge, how passionate you are about this.
Yeah, they want to know that you're excited about it, not just that you can do it. So how do you make your experience stand out, I guess is the question.
Well, instead of just listing off, all the different projects you've done, think about the stories behind those projects. Did you build an elaborate train set as a kid? Were you spending hours meticulously, laying the track and wiring the landscape? Or maybe, you recreated a famous landmark from a trip that you took. And you really captured all those details in your model.
Hmm.
Share those stories, talk about what inspired you, what challenges you faced, what you learned along the way.
Yeah, I think definitely mentioning the skills that you picked up along the way is good too, like woodworking or painting, or even if you've used any design software.
Absolutely. And be ready for those follow-up questions too. They might ask you to dive deeper into specific techniques that you use, or talk about the scale of your models, or even, how you ensured historical accuracy, if that was an important aspect of the project.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so let's move on to another one. Um, how do you ensure accuracy and attention to detail in your model making process?
Hmm. Oh, the pressure.
Right.
Like, I'm already feeling it.
Don't worry, this is your chance to really shine. Think about a time when, maybe you spotted like a tiny little discrepancy on a blueprint that nobody else even noticed.
Mm.
Or you spent hours perfecting the weathering on a model to make it look like it was really aged. These are the kinds of stories that are going to showcase your commitment to that precision.
I love that. It's like, look,
Yeah.
I noticed this 1 millimeter difference on this historical ship blueprint. That's the level of detail I bring.
Yeah.
So it's not just about saying you're detail-oriented. You have to prove it.
Exactly. And you can also talk about your process a little bit. Do you meticulously measure and double-check every dimension? Do you refer to historical documents or blueprints for accuracy? Maybe you use specialized tools like calipers or magnifying glasses to make sure every detail is absolutely perfect. Sharing these insights gives the interviewer a glimpse into your, meticulous mind. I like that your meticulous mind. Okay, so be ready to break down your process and back it up with stories that highlight your eagle eye.
Yeah.
And then they'll probably have some follow-ups there too, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you handle mistakes or what's your experience with different scales and levels of detail?
For sure. All right, moving on to something a little bit more technical. What software do you use to create models?
Hmm.
And, it's tempting to just rattle off a list of software names, but there's a much more strategic way to answer this question.
Yeah, you got to frame it the right way.
Precisely. So start by being honest about your experience. What programs are you really comfortable with? And connect those to some of the projects that you've worked on. Explain how you used a certain program to design, a complex component,
Hey.
or to generate a 3D model for printing.
Oh, I like that. It's like I use Blender to create this intricate 3D printed component for this model because it allowed me to achieve this level of detail. So it shows them that you understand the software's capabilities
Yes,
and how to leverage it.
exactly. And don't be afraid to mention any software that you're currently learning or that you're interested in exploring, because this field is constantly evolving. And, showing them that you're eager to learn and to stay up to date with all the new technology, that's a really big plus.
So even if you're not a master of every program, show them that you're a continuous learner.
Right.
And of course, they'll probably have follow-up questions there too.
Mhm.
Like, ask you to compare the pros and cons of different software, or your experience with troubleshooting,
Uh-huh.
or even your thoughts on the future of technology and how that's going to impact model making.
Sure. All right, so this is a question that might seem a little bit unexpected. How do you incorporate user experience into your model making process? And this is really all about showing them that you think beyond the technical aspects and you're considering, who's going to be interacting with this model at the end of the day.
Wow. I never really thought about user experience in model making. Tell me more about how that works in practice.
Well, think about who's going to be interacting with this model and for what purpose. So a model that's designed for a museum exhibit might require a focus on historical accuracy and visual impact, whereas a model intended for a kid's play set needs to be durable and safe and engaging.
So it's like you're tailoring your approach
Yeah.
based on what the model's going to be used for and who's going to be using it. So how do you showcase that kind of thinking in the interview?
Well, think back to some of your past projects
Right.
and identify instances where you really considered the user's needs. Did you ever design a model with specific features that enhanced playability or the educational value? Maybe you incorporated interactive elements into a historical diorama to make it more engaging for the viewer? Or you considered, ergonomics when you were designing the controls for a model ship. So share these types of examples with them.
I think highlighting your ability to gather feedback and incorporate that is important too.
Yeah.
Like maybe you've done some user testing
Right.
with model enthusiasts, or you've incorporated suggestions from museum curators to improve your designs.
Exactly. You want to show that you're willing to adapt based on user feedback because it shows that you're not just building these models in a vacuum. You're actually creating these experiences for other people.
So it's about proving that you're not just technically skilled, but you're user-centric in your thinking.
Yes.
And I bet they'll probably have some follow-ups there too, like how you approach user research or how you prioritize different user needs, or even your thoughts on accessibility and inclusivity in model design.
Absolutely. Now, building on that concept of, tailoring your approach, let's talk about creating models for different age groups and skill levels. So how do you approach creating models for different age groups and skill levels?
Yeah.
Because a model for a seasoned hobbyist is going to look a lot different than something that's designed for a child that's just starting out.
All right, you've got to meet them where they are.
Exactly. So how do you show them that you can cater to those different needs? Think about your process for understanding your target audience. Do you research the specific interests and abilities of different age groups? Do you consider the cognitive and motor skills that are required? To build models of varying complexity, maybe you've even designed models with adjustable difficulty levels to cater to a wider range of skill sets. Share those insights.
I love that idea of adjustable difficulty levels. It's like the model grows with you as you become more skilled.
Right.
I think having specific examples would really drive this point home.
Yeah.
Maybe you design a simplified model airplane kit for kids,
Yeah.
complete with easy-to-follow instructions and pre-painted parts. Or a more challenging kit for experienced hobbyists that involves intricate detailing and custom painting.
Exactly. Those examples make your approach a lot more tangible. And as always, be ready for those follow-up questions. They might ask about, your design philosophy, how you balance that complexity with accessibility, or even your experience incorporating educational elements into recreational models.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still plenty more to unpack. Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll dive into more interview questions and how RoleCatcher's AI can give you that extra edge you need to land that dream job.
So let's jump back into those interview questions. The next one I want to talk about is, what materials do you use for your models and how do you choose them? It's not just about knowing, balsa wood from resin. It's about showing that you understand how those materials are going to impact your choices for the model.
So it's like not just listing materials, but explain the why behind your selections.
Exactly. So start by, mentioning the materials you're most comfortable working with. Do you love the versatility of plastic?
Wow.
Because it can be molded into all those intricate shapes. Or maybe you appreciate the classic feel and workability of wood.
Yeah.
Be specific and connect those preferences to real-world examples.
Like, I chose lightweight balsa wood for this model airplane because it's ideal for achieving optimal flight characteristics. Or I opted for durable resin for this model ship because it'll be displayed outdoors and needs to withstand the elements. So you're making informed decisions.
Yes, you're showing them you understand the relationship between the material that you choose and the model's purpose.
Yeah.
And be ready for follow-up questions. They might ask about, your experience sourcing materials, or your knowledge of sustainable options, or even your willingness to experiment with new and innovative materials.
Right, because it's important to stay current with new materials and techniques. Speaking of staying current, how do you approach this question? How do you stay up to date with the latest trends in technology and model making? I feel like this is an opportunity to really impress them.
It is, because you're showing them that you're constantly learning and trying to improve your craft. So share your strategies for staying informed. Do you subscribe to industry magazines or online forums? Do you attend workshops or conferences? Maybe you experiment with new tools and techniques in your personal projects.
Oh, yeah.
Be specific and be enthusiastic about it.
It's like saying, hey, I'm so passionate about model making that I'm researching new 3D printing techniques or eco-friendly materials in my spare time.
Yeah.
So it shows them that you're not just doing this for a job, you're genuinely invested.
Exactly. And you can connect your learning to real-world applications. Maybe you picked up a new 3D printing technique and you incorporated it into a recent project. Or you discovered a more environmentally friendly paint and you started using that in your work. These examples show them that you're applying what you learned to improve your skills.
It's all about being a lifelong learner and constantly pushing yourself to grow. Speaking of pushing boundaries, let's talk about sustainability. That's a big topic these days. So how would you approach the question, how do you incorporate sustainability into your model-making process?
This is a great opportunity to show that you're aware of environmental concerns and your commitment to responsible practices. So think about your process. Do you choose recycled or sustainably sourced materials whenever possible? Do you minimize waste by using scraps for smaller details? Or maybe you experiment with alternative construction methods. Maybe you even prioritize paints and adhesives with low VOC emissions to reduce air pollution.
And I think it's also about being resourceful and finding creative solutions, like upcycling old materials or experimenting with biodegradable alternatives to plastic. You're not just following trends, you're actually committed to making a difference.
Exactly. Those examples show that you're willing to think outside the box and be prepared to discuss your thoughts on the future of sustainable model making and any resources you have for eco-friendly materials, or even your willingness to educate others about the importance of reducing environmental impact in this hobby.
It's inspiring to see how sustainability is becoming such a big part of so many things. Now, before we move on to more questions, I want to talk about how RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you fine-tune your responses and stand out in those interviews.
It's a really great tool because it's tailored for different job roles, including recreation model maker. So it analyzes your responses, and it helps you find areas where you can strengthen your message or highlight those relevant skills and experience that you have.
It's like having an interview coach right in your pocket.
Right.
I'm really intrigued by their feedback on video responses. Imagine practicing your answer and getting real-time feedback on your delivery or your body language in your overall presentation.
It's a game changer because it helps you identify and address any nervous habits you may have so you can practice in a safe environment and get constructive criticism that'll help you shine in that real interview.
Okay, so RoleCatcher's AI helps you craft compelling responses, refine your delivery, and project confidence. That's a pretty powerful combination. Are you ready for a few more of those interview questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's dive into this one. How do you incorporate safety features into your recreational models? This might seem a little unexpected, but it's incredibly important, especially when you consider these models might be used by children or, inexperienced hobbyists.
Yeah, the interviewer wants to see that you're thinking about safety and that you're taking steps to prevent any potential hazards. So think about your design process. Do you carefully sand down any sharp edges? Do you avoid using toxic paints or glues? Do you design your models with safety features built in, like rounded corners or protective coverings for moving parts?
I think it's also about following industry standards and safety guidelines. Mentioning that you're familiar with those guidelines shows that you're professional.
For sure.
And that you're committed to creating a safe experience.
Exactly. And be prepared to discuss, any specific safety challenges you've encountered and how you addressed them, or even your thoughts on educating others about model safety.
Okay, let's shift gears to a question about the collaborative side of model making. How do you approach working with a team on a model making project? Because sometimes it's not a solitary pursuit.
Right. A lot of these projects really require teamwork, and the interviewer wants to know that you can communicate and collaborate effectively.
Right.
So think about your past experiences working on teams. Have you ever taken the lead on a project and had to delegate tasks or manage timelines or resolve conflicts? Or maybe you've adjusted your work style to accommodate different team dynamics, or even stepped in to help a teammate who was struggling.
It's all about showing that you're adaptable and supportive, and you can contribute to the team.
They'll probably have some follow-ups there too, like how you handle disagreements or your preferred methods for collaboration or your experience with working on remote teams.
Absolutely. All right, so this next question is all about passion. And this is your chance to really let your enthusiasm shine through. What are you most passionate about in model making?
I love this question.
Me too.
It's like they're giving you permission to just geek out about your favorite parts of the craft.
Exactly. What really gets you excited about model making? Is it that meticulous process of bringing a tiny world to life? Is it the challenge of mastering new techniques or experimenting with materials? Or is it the satisfaction of seeing your finished creation come to life, knowing that you poured all your effort into every little detail?
I think this is also a great opportunity to showcase your knowledge.
Yeah.
Like maybe you're passionate about a specific type of model making, like historical ships or architectural miniatures.
Right.
You can really use this to show off your depth of understanding. Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between personal passion and professional expertise. And don't be afraid to get specific. Talk about your favorite tools or techniques, or even the historical figures that inspire you.
Yeah, let your enthusiasm be your guide.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive into these interview questions and explore some final tips for making a lasting impression on those interviewers.
All right, we're back and ready for the final stretch of those interview questions. Let's jump into this one. What are your salary expectations? Now, talking about money can be a little awkward, but it's an important part of the process.
It is, and it's a question that's definitely going to come up, so you want to be prepared. The key is to do your research. Look into industry standards for recreation model makers with your level of experience. Sites like Glassdoor and Salary.com could be really helpful with that.
So you're not just throwing out a number, you're showing them that you understand what the market value is.
Yeah.
Right. And you can always frame your answer in terms of a range rather than a specific number. That gives you a little bit of flexibility for negotiation later on.
Okay, so do your research, give them a range, and be prepared to explain your reasoning. Okay, now let's tackle a question that often pops up towards the end. Do you have any questions for us? And now this is your chance to turn the tables a little bit and get some insights into the company and the role.
Absolutely. And it also shows that you're genuinely interested. So come prepared with a few thoughtful questions you can ask about the company culture, their approach to model making, or even the specific projects that you would be working on.
I like that. It shows them that you're not just looking for a job, you're looking for the right job.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap things up completely, I want to touch on RoleCatcher's AI-powered platform one more time. We talked about how it can help you tailor your resume and practice those interview answers, but it actually goes beyond that. RoleCatcher also provides valuable insights into the company you're interviewing with.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Their AI analyzes a ton of company data, including employee reviews, news articles, and social media posts, to give you a well-rounded view of the company's culture, their values, and even their reputation within the industry.
So it's like having a secret weapon.
Yeah.
That kind of information can be so helpful in crafting your responses and showing them that you'd be a great fit.
It really can. And remember, RoleCatcher's resources are designed to be there for you throughout the whole job search, from building that resume to nailing those interviews.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of recreation model maker interviews, I just want to leave you with one final thought. You are not just creating models, you are crafting experiences, sparking imaginations, and bringing tiny worlds to life. Let that passion shine through in your interviews. Use those fantastic resources from RoleCatcher and go build something extraordinary.